Making friends as an adult is hard. This video will help. We are, my generation and others, more disconnected than ever, and it's not a coincidence. We might not be at fault for the state that it is, but it is our responsibility to change something and to do something about it if we want to have connection in our lives and be less isolated. My friends have called me a professional social butterfly, which is one of the nicer compliments I've received over the years. And this video is a collection of all the things that I know about making friends and having good conversations. And I hope you find it helpful. Tomorrow I am moving cities and countries, so all that I'm going to talk about today I will need to apply in the next days and weeks to actually build myself a new social circle in the area and the city that I moved to. So whatever I'm saying here is not something that I've pulled out of my ass. It's something that I've used again and again to make friends, that I have experienced, that I know works for me, and I will apply it again, and I hope it works for you. The first thing, and it sounds very trite, is that if you want to meet a certain kind of person, you have to be that kind of person. If you want to meet creative people, if you want to meet athletic people, if you like people who read or who go a lot of outside, it helps. It really helps if you are that kind of person. Which makes sense, you know. A lot of us want to meet people that share interests with us, and we want to meet people that are like us, that understand us, that get us. And sometimes we forget that the best way to meet a person like that is to become that person. So when it comes to also traits like honesty, reliability, or emotional intelligence that you look for in your friends, it's a good idea to just cultivate that trait in yourself, because, well, the person you would like to be friends with is likely also going to be looking for these traits in friends. And so if you have them yourself, that's a good shot, and that is going to maximize your chances. The second thing related to that is go to places where people like the person you want to be friends with hang out. If you want to meet someone who spends a lot of time outside and who's athletic, maybe go to a run club or join a hiking group or go to a climbing gym. If you like someone who's into videography, take your camera and hang out in co-working spaces. I've literally met people just because I have worked in a co-working space and I had my camera on the table, on the desk. Signal that you are interested or you are working on something. If you want to meet someone who's creative and reads a lot, go to a library. This principle, you can apply it to basically also finding a partner or finding friends. It's the same thing. But going to places where the people like the person you want to meet hang out is a very good principle. And once you are in these places, for the love of God, make yourself approachable. Meaning, take your headphones out. Headphones kill so many possibilities for interactions. It's almost incredible. Take your headphones out. Smile at people. Try to make eye contact if you're, whether it's in the gym, in the library, in a church if that's your thing, or wherever you are. Try to make yourself approachable and make it easy for other people to be able to approach you. Now this is sort of a general basis of how to attract and how you meet people. When it comes to actually connecting with people, there are kind of two options. Either you are interesting or you are interested. Interesting or interested. Both work, but one is much easier than the other. Let's start with the one that's a bit harder. Be interesting. If you are someone who doesn't have a lot going on in their life, who doesn't have hobbies, who doesn't have interests, or who doesn't have things that you are genuinely passionate about, you're gonna find it harder to find friends. Because, at least I think, or I feel like, I'm really attracted to people that I can learn something from, that are passionate about something, that love doing something, that can speak passionately about their interests. And if you don't have interests, if you don't have stories to tell except what you watched on Netflix or memes that you can share, if you don't have uniqueness, if you don't have cool memories or cool things you've done in your past that you can talk about and share, well, then it's gonna be difficult for you to get people's attention and to get them interested in you. So if you don't have anything like that, if you spend most of your time scrolling or consuming other content that other people, make, try to pick up something that you can put out in the world, something creative, or try to find your interests. What would you learn about for fun? What would you create for fun? Would it be something you write? Would it be the ancient Romans you want to learn about in your free time? Or would it be making videos that you would do without anyone forcing you? If you have these things that you genuinely love, that you can talk about for hours, and you allow yourself to express that, you don't hide it, you allow it to come out of you, then you are going to be more interesting to other people. And whether you like it or not, especially in the beginning phases of a friendship, being interesting is very, very important because it attracts people. The second part of the equation, which is much easier, is being interested in other people. How does that look like? Well, in a conversation, it looks like genuinely trying to learn and listen to the other person. And you won't believe how powerful this is until you've actually tried it for a while. Like, many people have not been truly listened to in a long time by someone who doesn't want to impress them, but just wants to hear what they have to say. And the way you can do this is, when someone speaks to you, don't wait your turn until you can speak. Don't think of what you're going to say while they are still speaking. Don't try to come up with a cool story to tell after they've stopped speaking. Just try to listen to them. Try to understand what they say. Try to find the meaning and the emotions behind what they're saying. And ask some follow-up questions. The easiest way you can do this is what Chris Voss calls mirroring, is just repeating the last couple words of the sentence they said as a question. So, for example, someone says, I was in Italy, we were on this lake on a boat, and it was amazing because the sun was shining and there's this beautiful architecture. And if you don't know what to say, you just, there's this beautiful architecture. And this will prompt them to tell you more about the beautiful architecture they saw, right? And engaging like that, trying to get the most out of the other person and making them feel interesting, making the other person feel like they are interesting. This feels very good to the person you have a conversation with. And that allows them to bring the best out of them. You will, in that process, reveal their interest and reveal the things they can't shut up about, which again makes them more interesting. There's this beautiful quote: when you find yourself in a conversation and the conversation is boring, you're the boring one. And it's not because some people might be less interesting than others, it's because the fact that you are not willing to listen enough to allow the other person to bring out the interesting thing makes you boring, right? So really trying to be interested and bring the best out in the other person is a wonderful way to make people connect with you. And it's way easier than being interesting, right? You don't have to do anything except listen, ask follow-up questions, and be really engaged in what the other person says. You don't have to have done anything interesting in your life. You can just do that with anyone, which I think is, for sure, really cool because it's accessible to anyone. Chris Williamson has a beautiful word for this. He calls it reverse charisma. Charisma being, I come to you and I show you how wonderful I am. Reverse charisma being, I make you feel wonderful, which is, I think, a really cool idea. Now, keeping in the theme with having good conversations, if you want to understand how to have good conversations with strangers, you gotta understand something called conversation threading. Now, here's how it works. If someone asks me, where do you live? And I say, I live in Munich. That gives them nothing to reply or to hang on to ask another question. But if I say, I live in Munich and I love it because it's very close to the mountains and I can go hiking or skiing on the weekend. Also, I'm very close to my work, so I don't have a long commute, which is quite cool, but it's quite expensive, and as a result, I don't have money to do this hobby of mine that I would really love to do. Now I have mentioned a hobby, I have mentioned my work and a short commute, and I've mentioned that I live close to the mountains for hiking and skiing. So I have given the other person 4 threads that they can hang on to. If they can now say something about any of these 4 things, about their job, about mountains, about hiking, about skiing, whatever, then they can hang on to this thread that I laid out and they can then continue the conversation forward, right? So in my answer, I sprinkle little things, little threads that they can hang on to continue the conversation. I make it easy. I make it easy for them to ask more questions and to bring information from their side. In a way, conversations are like dancing. The more you focus on yourself, the more you fuck up, right? So if I'm in a conversation and I'm always thinking, oh my god, how do I come across? And what should I say to make myself look good? And how do I phrase this? And yada, yada, yada. Same as when you're dancing and you pay attention to your feet and you're like, okay, I can't cross my feet. And oh my god, what am I going to do? You're going to trip up. But if you're thinking, okay, how can I make the other person more comfortable? How can I speak and how can I present and how can I engage to make the other person more comfortable and to give the other person opportunities to shine and to bring out the best in themselves, then it's much easier. And then you can use something like conversation threading where you give the other person something to work with. You can't expect them to just make up a conversation that's inspiring and interesting and is going to bind you as friends just out of nowhere. It's a two-way street, and if you can make the other person very comfortable, they are going to bring out the best in themselves, and the conversation is going to be much more fruitful. One more very easy principle about conversations that you can implement. When someone tells a story, never move on without a follow-up question. When someone tells a story, don't jump immediately into your own story that maybe relates to it. Always ask at least one follow-up question. Again, it gives the other person more opportunity to reveal information. It makes them feel heard. It makes them feel listened to. You are engaged. And you can say, oh, that's really pretentious. Always ask one follow-up question. What if I don't want to ask one? Well, but in order to ask a follow-up question, you actually have to listen to the story. So if you have the principle, I want to ask a follow-up question, then you actually have to be truly engaged in order to be able to ask a genuine question afterwards. So the fact that you tell yourself, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, doesn't make it less genuine. It actually forces you to be more genuine and to be more focused and more engaged in the conversation from the get-go, which I think is such a simple principle to implement that is going to transform the way you have conversations. And lastly, when it comes to conversations, always assume the person you're speaking to knows something that you don't. This principle also has broke my mind when I first heard it and has completely transformed the way I have conversations. If you assume that no matter who you're speaking to, they might know something that has slipped your mind, that is outside of your perspective, that is unique to their experience, that they can teach you, that you don't know, then you're gonna hunt for these bits and pieces of information. And it makes it really fun actually to talk to strangers, because you go in with this mindset of pure curiosity. You're like, what can you teach me? What can I find out about your story? And once you approach meeting strangers with this attitude of wanting to find out and learn about them, instead of wanting to make yourself seem as interesting as possible, then the way you approach these conversations transforms from self-presenting to inquisitive. And I think that's really beautiful. At least that has been my experience. The next 2 principles are 2 that I've come across while I have been moving and traveling and couch surfing, basically homeless maxing, in my 20s in the last 2-3 years. And it's these 2. One, be a blessing to host. And two, if you want to be invited to dinner parties, host them. Let's start with one. Be a blessing to host. What do I mean by this? I have crashed on people's couches and in people's apartments quite a lot in the last couple of years. And every time I stay at someone's place, I try to make myself a net benefit to their life. I try to make the evening that I stay at their place better than if I wouldn't have been there. That can mean something as simple as bringing a bottle of wine or bringing flowers. But I think I've like folded someone's laundry just because it was right there. I'm actually not sure if I did that. But what I've for sure done is I've cooked for them. I said, hey, I want to cook for you tonight. And then I got groceries and I made them a nice meal as a thank you that I was there. And people are usually quite delighted by that. Or I've organized something in the afternoon that I took them to. Stuff like that people wouldn't have otherwise done, but that I can bring to their life. And this makes people more likely to host you in the future, and it makes them appreciate your presence. So, always be a pleasure to host. And the second part of that equation is if you want to be invited to dinner parties, start hosting them. I did this actually a couple of weeks ago. I was visiting a friend in the city I will be moving to, and I thought, hey, I wanna meet people here, but I don't know anyone, except I knew two people. One of them could lend me his apartment, and one of them knew a bunch of people. So what did I do? I hit up the friend that knew a bunch of people and said, hey, do you want to host a party together? We hosted a PowerPoint party where we eventually got 10 people in a room together, and everyone held a small presentation about their niche interests and about their life, essentially, which was really cool because by hosting an event, this PowerPoint party, that I would have loved to be invited to, I could pre-select for the kinds of people that I wanted to be friends with. And this is, the exact same principle as in the very beginning. If you want to be friends with people who have certain traits, embody those traits. If you want to be friends with people who go to house parties, host a house party. If you want to be friends with people who would love to join a book club, start a book club, host a reading session. But you've got to be proactive about this. And you can host the stuff you would love to be invited to, and then when someone else hosts something similar, they will invite you too. But you've got to be proactive about this stuff. Now, before I finish off, I have one principle that underlies all of these things, and one super simple life hack that is going to elevate the level of your friendships from the second you implement it. The life hack first. Text your friends when you think about them. It sounds super trite and it sounds super easy, but if you think of a moment you shared a laugh with that friend, if you listen to a song that reminds you of them, if you meet a mutual friend that reminds you of them, whatever it is, if you think about them, text them. It can be very easy. Hey, I just remembered the time that we did this X, Y, and Z. So fun. Can't wait to see you again. Or it can just be, dude, I just listened to this song. Like, nostalgia is coming back. This is, it costs you nothing. It costs you maybe 30 seconds to a minute. The only risks is that they ignore you, really. And the upside of that is your friend in the middle of the day gets reminded that you think about them. And if you can, if you think how that would feel for you to get a text from your friends in the middle of the day, them telling you that you think about them, that they think about you, that would feel really cool. And you can do the same for other people. And for me, it's been a tremendous benefit for my friendships. Lastly, the principle that underlies all of this and will make it much easier to find not only friends, but friends that are right for you is, you're gonna roll your eyes like mad, but give me a second, be yourself. And I know how stupid that sounds, but hear me out. Obviously, you want to put your best foot forward when making friends. And I've literally talked about things that you can change about yourself or behaviors you can do that you are not yet doing to increase your likelihood of making friends. And I'm not talking about these things when I say be yourself, right? What I'm talking about, be yourself, is don't do things that misrepresent your true values or your true interests. Why? Why would that be important? Well, if you present yourself as someone fundamentally different than you are, then you are going to make friends with people that don't like the person you are, but they like the version you project, right? They like the mask you put out into the world. And every time you're around these people, you're going to have to keep up that mask because they don't like you, they like the mask. And so their company is conditional of you playing the role that you first played when you became friends with them. And this over time is going to be really, really difficult and strenuous. And after all, they're not going to like you, they're going to like the version of you that they think you are. And in the same vein, if you project this mask that is not you and that maybe misrepresents your interests and that betrays your values, then the people who would actually like you for who you are and would actually like the real you, they won't connect with you and you're not going to become friends with them because they only see this, right? So by portraying yourself as different than who you actually are, by not being as authentic as you could be, you are attracting people who don't like the real you and only like the mask, and you fail to attract people who would actually like the real you. And it's been a pet obsession of mine to think about what quote unquote real you actually is, because essentially I believe it's a set of behaviors that we do and that changes over time. But this is a topic for a very different podcasts, and the central question here is, does the world love you for who you are or for what you do? But this goes way beyond what I want to talk about today. The central theme I want you to remember is that by misrepresenting who you are, what you believe, and what you're interested in, you will fail to attract the people who you would connect with, and you attract people who you don't really connect with if you were who you truly are. I hope this helped. In the next days and weeks, I'm going to put all these principles to the test because I'm going to move into a completely new environment and will have to put my money where my mouth is and make friends using all these things I just described. So if you see me here in a couple of weeks saying I can't make friends, then you can take all of this with a shitload of salt, but I don't believe that will be the case. If this helped, share this with someone who might need it. Follow the show on Spotify or YouTube to support it. It would mean a tremendous amount to me, and I hope to see you next week on Courageously Curious, where I just, follow my curiosity and hopefully find the courage to, once again next week, put something out in the internet. Thank you, and goodbye.